Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Okay. As the disappearance day of Gaura-kisora Babaji approaches, we continue reading about his biography, his life, and his pastimes. And we're on, this is section 11. It's entitled Displaying Ecstatic Symptoms. On one occasion, Srila Babaji Maharaj was sitting within his bhajan kutir in Sri Navadvip, loudly chanting Hare Krishna. Other persons who had assembled there were also chanting. At this time, someone came and began to display different ecstatic symptoms, such as crying. Some of the assembled devotees thought, "Lo, that person has attained the highest stage of devotional ecstasy by chanting the glories of the Lord." Srila Gaura-kisora Babaji, however, immediately requested the man to leave. Some of the onlookers became disturbed by this and left. Babaji Maharaj commented, "One who has actually attained love of Godhead will never display the symptoms thereof, but will keep them hidden from the general populace. A chaste wife becomes very embarrassed when she has to show any part of her body in public, and she thus keeps her body thoroughly covered. In the same way, when one has real devotion for the Supreme Lord, becomes elevated to love of Godhead, he always feels embarrassed to exhibit symptoms of ecstasy and always keeps such symptoms hidden." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu demonstrated this principle on numerous occasions. Upon meeting Srila Ramananda Roy by the banks of the Godavari, for example, he embraced him and felt so much ecstasy that, along with Ramananda, he was overwhelmed with spiritual emotion. However, in consideration of the fact that Ramananda Roy was the governor of Madras and was accompanied by many persons who could not understand such transcendental dealings, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu restrained himself. On another occasion, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met with Vallabhacharya near Prayag, he was overwhelmed with ecstatic feelings, but he again restrained himself, feeling bashful in the presence of a person who, though exalted, was not his intimate associate. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt great ecstatic love when they began discussing Krishna, but the Lord checked his feelings because he felt shy before Vallabhabhata. Although the Lord restrained himself externally, ecstatic love raged within. There was no checking that. Vallabhabhata was astonished to detect this. Section 12. The sharp words of the sadhu. Srila Gaura-kisora Babaji Maharaj always gave beneficial instructions to persons who approached him with faith and humility, no matter what their spiritual status. On one such occasion, a seeker went to Babaji Maharaj to hear topics concerning the Supreme Lord, but he heard some harsh words from him instead. The seeker therefore resolved to never go near Babaji Maharaj again. After some time, however, having been stricken with a distressed and troubled mind, he suddenly returned to see Babaji Maharaj. Srila Babaji Maharaj, instantly realizing the reason for his depression, told him, "Oh, you have left the association of devotees where topics about Krishna are discussed, and now you're living in a secluded place, performing solitary worship of Krishna. When one hears the topics of the Supreme Lord in the company of devotees, then one becomes freed from Maya's net of illusion. But if one performs worship of the Lord in a secluded place, not in association with devotees, one becomes caught by the illusory energy. As a consequence, Instead of topics about the Supreme Lord possessing the heart, mundane subject matters will occupy it instead. The seeker replied, I thought it better to reside in a secluded place, perform my own individual worship, than to become disturbed by hearing sharp words of Asado. Srila Babaji Maharaj replied, Please take note that those sadhus who speak sharp words to drive away the witch of the illusory energy are actually the only real devotees of Krishna and friends of the living entities. The conditioned living being experiences the distressful quarreling of his wife and close relatives and is rudely treated by them until death, yet he never desires to leave their association. On the other hand, he absorbs himself in trying to appease and serve them. But when a devotee of the Lord, who is always desirous of a living entity's ultimate welfare, chides him just once with instructions meant to drive away Maya, then that conditioned entity immediately makes plans to leave the saintly person for his entire life. If you actually want to perform devotional service properly, then you must accept the harsh language of the sadhu as the medicine by which Maya can be given up. By this one can obtain the necessary spiritual advancement to successfully chant the holy name. The bound souls are prepared to accept unlimited abuse from their family members, but not a single sharp word from a sadhu who attempts to cut their attachment to illusory energy. The materialistic wife and family members induce a man to work like an ass, and meanwhile deride him for not fulfilling all of their demands. Yet, while the family may legitimately plunder a man and denounce him bitterly for his shortcomings, the acquiescent victim is not in the least able to tolerate words which might awaken him to the reality of his situation. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur described the power of the sadhu in an essay called Search for the Truth as follows. There's no doubt that the words of the sadhu possess the power of destroying the evil propensities of one's mind. The sadhus in this way benefit everyone who associates with them. There are many things which we do not disclose to the sadhu, and the real sadhu makes us speak out what we keep concealed in our hearts. He then applies the knife. The very word sadhu has no meaning other than this. He stands in front of the block with the uplifted sacrificial knife in his hand. The sensuous desires of men are like goats. The sadhu stands there to kill those desires by the merciful stroke of the keen edge of the sacrificial knife in the form of unpleasant language. If the sadhu turns into my flatterer, he does me harm. He becomes my enemy. If he gives us flattery, then we're led to the road that brings enjoyment, but no real well-being. Without the association of devotees, one will almost certainly be overwhelmed by the illusory energy, and his thoughts will naturally turn to gratifying his senses. During the discussions between Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy, Lord Chaitanya inquired, out of all auspicious and beneficial activities, which is best for the living entity? Ramananda Roy replied, the only auspicious activity is association with the devotees of Krishna. And in the Shrimad Bhagavatam it is stated, we are asking the most perfect welfare activity from you. I think that in this material world, association with devotees, even if it be for a moment, is the greatest treasure house for mankind. The importance of materially conditioned devotees associating with saintly persons has thus been stressed by all the Vaishnava authorities, even those who seem to shun the company of others in order to prosecute their solitary worship. Although it is a fact that great Paramahamsas like Srila Madhavendra Puri perform such solitary worship in complete purity, this cannot be imitated by neophytes. Section 13. The Householder's Vow. A newly married devotee and his wife once went to pray for the mercy of Srila Gaura-kisora Babaji. Babaji Maharaj instructed the husband, saying, "If you actually want to perform devotional service, then you must live separately from your wife, and thus, not depending on one another, chant the glories of the Lord." After hearing these instructions, the newlyweds did as they were advised. A few days passed, and the devotee came again to Babaji Maharaj, who then asked, "Are you and your wife taking your foodstuffs together or separately?" The husband told him, "We are living separately and carrying on our worship as you instructed, but we take our foodstuff together." Babaji Maharaj then inquired, "What did you have today?" The newlywed man answered, "We had very nice vegetables, the best dal, and fried eggplant." Babaji Maharaj then explained, "If you only give up the external connection with your wife, that is not sufficient, because you're associating with her within. You have not been able to give up the finest foodstuffs prepared for your wife, by your wife, so how will you be able to worship the Lord? Your wife is communicating with you through the medium of what she has cooked. Shame, shame. Even though you are acting as if you are chanting the Lord's holy name, still you're desiring the stems of the finest vegetables. Do you think that after someone suffers a loss of 1 lakh of rupees, he'll be satisfied accepting only a handful of rice? Although he may gradually become accustomed to accepting the rice as a daily practice, still he will always think of the money he has lost. Even if one were to give such a person the most delicious foodstuffs, because he will always be anxious about what he has lost, he will not be able to put the longing for it from his heart. You have lost that which is invaluable, your devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Thus, how can you become absorbed in eating such nice foodstuffs? As for your wife, externally you're disassociated from her, but you're maintaining attachment within." Householders may feel intimidated by Babaji Maharaj's uncompromising judgment of the above-mentioned marriage. Fortunately, he gave other instructions that resolve the problem of the material attachment that inevitably arises within a marriage, and these instructions are dealt with below. Section 14. Renunciation for Krishna's pleasure and false renunciation. A married man present during Babaji Maharaj's conversation with the newly wedded husband inquired from Paramahamsa as follows: "We see that there are many Vaishnavas living with their wives who perform devotional service to Lord Hari. Will any benefit accrue to such persons?" Srila Babaji Maharaj replied, "The living entity is the eternal servant of Lord Krishna. But when the conditioned soul looks upon his wife and sons, he simply sees their material forms. If one does not have the eye of devotion, one can never perceive his real identity as the eternal servant of Krishna. The bound soul always have the inclination to enjoy their wives and children. These days, the living entities do not like to hear topics of the Supreme Lord or to get the association of the Lord's devotees. If one does not attain the spiritual energy given by the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, then one will become attracted by his wife and offspring. Then again, some persons feign detachment from their wives, children, and sense pleasures. This kind of external renunciation is like the renunciation of monkeys, who are actually renounced, although they apparently eschew clothing, proper shelter, and other trappings of sensory emolument. The abnegation of the monkey-like renunciates, Markata Vairagis, is simply a pretense. The genuine Vaishnava will never maintain an attitude of sense gratification towards his wife. Rather, he will always regard himself as the servant of Krishna and the bona fide guru. Those actually desirous of performing Hari Bhajan, but in whose hearts the weeds of material desires grow, and who are unable to give up excessive attachment to wife and children, should also come and hear from the pure devotees, chant Hare Krishna, and perform congregational chanting. In this way, they can quickly become detached from the inclination to enjoy their wives and children. They will gradually realize that if one completely surrenders to Krishna, then one will attain all auspiciousness. As long as one remains in bodily consciousness, one cannot obtain the mercy of Lord Krishna. The extension of bodily consciousness is seen in the affection displayed for one's wife and offspring. And yet, one who leaves the association of his wife because of being thoroughly distressed in mind, and continues to seek happiness for his own mind and body, is not a real renunciate. The distinctive feature of the renunciation of the devotee of Krishna is its not being diverted from him in any way. A real renunciate accepts what is favorable for the Lord's satisfaction, rejects whatever is unfavorable. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu described the alternative to monkey-like renunciation to Raghunath Das Goswami as follows. You should not make yourself a show-bottle devotee, become a false renunciate, marketa vairagi. For the time being, enjoy the material world in a befitting way, and do not become attached to it. In his commentary on the above verse, Srila Prabhupada states, the word marketa vairagya, indicating false renunciation, is very important in this verse. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in commenting on this word, points out that monkeys make an external show of renunciation by not accepting clothing, and living naked in the forest. In this way, they consider themselves renunciates, but actually they're very busy enjoying sense gratification with dozens of female monkeys. Such renunciation is called marketa vairagya, the renunciation of a monkey. One cannot be really renounced until one actually becomes disgusted with material activity and sees it as a stumbling block to spiritual advancement. Renunciation should not be palgu, temporary, but should exist throughout one's life. Temporary renunciation, or monkey renunciation, is like the renunciation one feels at a cremation ground. When a man takes a dead body to the crematorium, he sometimes thinks, "This is the final end of the body. Why am I working so hard day and night?" Such sentiments naturally arise in the mind of any man who goes to a crematorium ghat. However, as soon as he returns from the crematorium grounds, he again engages in material activity for sense enjoyment. This is called samasana vairagya, or marketa vairagya. The word marketa vairagya is used by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to indicate so-called Vaishnavas who dress themselves in loincloths, trying to imitate Srila Rupa Goswami. Such people carry a bead bag and chant Hare Krishna, but at heart they're always thinking about getting women and money. Unknown to others, these marketa vairagis maintain women, but externally present themselves as renunciates. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very much opposed to these marketa vairagis, or pseudo-Vaishnavas. Section 15. That is the highest happiness. Someone once observed a follower of Srila Gaura-kisora Babaji Maharaja begging alms at noon in the hot summer sun during the month of Chaitra, April-May. Approaching Babaji Maharaj, he asked him, "Why is your servant begging in the hot sun? Everyone begs in the morning, and then they return to their residences." Srila Babaji Maharaj told him, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has instructed his followers, "Troubles encountered in your service shall be the cause of great happiness, for in your devotional service joy and sorrow are equally great riches. Both destroy the misery of ignorance." Srila Gaura-kisora Babaji has given this instruction to those who, desiring real benefit, always take shelter of the Supreme Master Shri Krishna and the devotees of the Lord. One must tolerate the distress that assails one as one practices devotional service in this unhappy world. In this way, the dualistic sufferings which appear in the form of happiness and distress will diminish. As long as one renders service unto the Lord in order to achieve a comfortable material situation, he cannot become free from the bondage of ignorance. Section 16. The different forms of Maya. Once, during the rainy season, Srila Babaji Maharaj left his kutir and dwelt under the porch of a dharmasala in Navadvip. Rice prasad was kept there for him on a hanging rope shelf, and a poisonous snake slithered down the wall with the help of the rope shelf, took note of the aroma of the prasad, and started to move away. Seeing the snake, an old woman came running, crying, "A snake is about to bite you!" Srila Babaji Maharaj, who was blind, beat the ground with his hand and then asked, "Where is this snake? Where is this snake?" In the meantime, the serpent disappeared. The old woman exclaimed, "Oh, Babaji Maharaj, have you gone mad? That snake could have bitten you. He has just disappeared by your right side. Had you extended your right hand a fraction more to the side, you would have been bitten for sure. We cannot allow you to stay here." Hearing this, Babaji Maharaj told her, "Mother, you have inconvenienced yourself by standing here so long. You must be tired. Please, don't stand here any longer." The woman replied with determination, "I shall not leave this place until you go into your room." Babaji Maharaj replied, "I am going to accept prasad now. First I'll take prasad, then I'll go into my room." The old woman continued to admonish him, saying, "That prasad may have been touched by the lips of the snake. You cannot accept it, because if it's poisonous, you'll die. I'll bring fresh prasad for you." Srila Babaji Maharaj then firmly stated, "I only accept prasad that has been offered to the deity, or which I have obtained through begging, and not otherwise. I do not take food offered by materialistic people." Turning to one of Babaji Maharaj's attendants, the old woman asked, "Will you please arrange for more rice for Babaji Maharaj?" Srila Babaji Maharaj then spoke more firmly, saying, "My dear mother, if you do not leave this place, I shall not listen to anything else you have to say." Feeling rejected, the woman left. After some time, the Babaji asked the attendant if she had gone. Being answered in the affirmative, he remarked, "Do you see that, how Maya is acting? How under the pretense of sympathy she tries to gain control? How she tries to gradually enter in various deceptive ways? Maya takes on various forms. She knows many tricks to cause the living entity to give up the worship of the Lord. Under different pretenses, she tried to make me enter into my room, not accept prasad, and so forth. She never lets the living entity serve the Supreme Lord." Then the Paramahamsa began to loudly sing the following song by Srila Narottam Das Thakur. There's a song here, it's probably Bengali, but it's not familiar. I'm not going to stumble over it. But here's the translation. "Not having worshipped the lotus feet of Lord Gauranga, I've met only ruin. I've lost the jewel of love of Godhead due to my own negligence. I have only given attention to that which is not real wealth and abandoned that which has actual value. I've sunk within the material world by the reactions of my own karma. Having left real association, I'm performing materialistic activities. I've thus become conditioned by the grasp of past karma. I have tasted the poison of material sense gratification over and over again. For this reason, I have not become absorbed in the nectar of the congregational chanting of Lord Hari. Why do I remain alive? What is my happiness? Why hasn't Narottam Das given up his life?" The Paramahamsa Babaji considered that the snake and the argumentative old woman were agents of the illusory potency come to test his determination to serve the Lord according to his strict standard. Of course, such a Vaishnava as Gaura-kisora Das Babaji Maharaj was never subject to material tendencies of any sort. It was out of humility that he thought himself liable to be seduced by Maya. If a devotee such as he thought thus, how much should we, who simply aspire for spiritual advancement, not knowing when we shall achieve our goal? Srila Gaura-kisora Babaji, and the Supersoul. One night, at about 10 o'clock, Srila Babaji Maharaj suddenly awoke crying, "Did you see that? Did you see that? The lecturer has gone to the district of Pavana, and at night he has had illicit sex with a widow there. Shame, shame! These evildoers, by their vile activities, have scandalized the name of religion." Srila Babaji Maharaj uttered these statements as though he were directly witnessing everything. He continued saying, "Mahaprabhu has let me know the truth about this so-called scholar who travels from place to place, advertising himself as very learned. In the name of giving Shrimad Bhagavatam class, he collects money to support himself. The common people do not know his real nature. He always keeps a widow with him. When anyone asks him about her, he passes her off as his wife. Whatever money he earns, he spends to purchase expensive items for her. Is there anyone who is more of an offender than a hypocrite than this person?" The opulence of omniscience was bestowed upon the Paramahamsa for the purpose of unmasking rascals and hypocrites. Such incidents evidence the fact that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was directing Sri Gaura-kisora Babaji Maharaj to expose the various forms of deception and hypocrisy that exist in the name of spiritual life. We are fortunate that he acted thus, for he had not identified the cheaters around him, his own character might not have shone forth as resplendently as it did. Section 17. General Instructions. Once, Srila Gaura-kisora Babaji wrapped his body and feet with a cloth. Sitting covered like this, he said, "Many persons, after being informed by others that I am a Vaishnava, come here to collect the dust from my feet. I tell them, I'm not a Vaishnava. If you go where there are Vaishnavas with their feet pretentiously decorated and extended to be touched, then you can get unlimited dust." At this time, a person named Bhattacharya came from Vrindavan with his female companion to see Srila Babaji Maharaj. Approaching him, he said, "You are my spiritual master. Please be merciful to me." Babaji Maharaj replied, saying, "I have nothing. I have no rasgulas, sandas, luchis, puris, money, sweet rice, or sweet words. How can I bless you? Those spiritual masters who can feed their disciples many sweets are praised as the most advanced. Nowadays, such a person is qualified to become a spiritual master." Presently, the learned section defines the word anukula, favorable, as receiving wealth, a beautiful wife, or sweet words. Bhattacharya then remarked, "We have many misconceptions. Whatever you instruct, that we will do." Srila Gaura-kisora Babaji Maharaj then instructed him, "I can see what is most favorable for you. You should eat rice that has been soaked in water and sit on a grass seat. You should eat food that has not even a dog would accept. You should wear clothes that even a thief would not steal. You must remain in the association of devotees and always chant the holy name of the Lord. By imitating the activities of one who is very renounced, one resembles a monkey. Monkeys sit in one place and remain quiet, but when they get opportunity, they steal something. As long as one acts like a monkey, then his devotional service will never become fixed." Babaji Maharaj thus instructed Bhattacharya with respect to his actual position, and responded to his insincere plea for instruction by giving him orders that a monkey-like renunciate could never follow. The humorous depiction of so-called spiritual masters given by Babaji Maharaj aptly describes a category of guru that people keep as a pet for fulfilling their material desires. Though speaking for Bhattacharya's benefit, it is clear that the man was not sincere enough to actually hear the instructive words of a bona fide guru.